So in this video I'm going to look at rewiring my Satnav on the V85TT. I saw on some of the Facebook groups someone had taken apart the back of the instrument cluster and had wired in their Satnav there, and that looked like quite a good place to do it. It means you're not running a cable along past the fuel tank over the cylinder head to the front of the bike. So today I'm going to attempt to rewire my Satnav.
Okay, so I decided to remove the screen and the frame it attaches to all in one piece, rather than taking the screen off first and then taking off the support frame. I'm basically lazy. I just thought this would be quicker and easier to do. On the travel with its screen, you can actually get to the support bracket bolts fairly easily. You can bend the perspex screen slightly out of the way to get to the ones nearest the front with no issue. The front ones take a 4mm Allen key, and the rear ones take a 5mm Allen key, because of course they do. So the bolts came out without too much difficulty. The screen adjustment ones were fairly loose, the ones at the front were a bit tighter. I was doing this on my own, and it was easy enough to get the bolts out and to lift the screen off by myself. Just be careful not to lose any of the washers or the pieces that go in.
Two more Phillips screws. Two more screws hidden away, one here, one in the same position on the other side. And what we have here is another one with these two-way waterproof connectors. Here's the connectors I had earlier. Power comes from the wiring harness into the USB socket. So what I think I need to do is create a Y connector, so one plug wired into two sockets. I can then plug in the original USB, and I can take a power feed for my Satnav connector as well. Then there appears to be enough room under here. I can shove the Satnav wiring under there and I just have the cable coming out and up the frame into the Satnav. That's much neater than having it under the tank. So I'm going to cut all these wires to length. And I think I'm going to use butt connectors, standard crimp connectors. You could use something like a screw terminal inside some sort of case, or if you've got some decent tape to wrap around it, but these are going to create a neater join, I think. I know real electricians do it with their bare teeth, but screw that, these are awesome. Is that going to work? It's shonky, but we might get away with it. So there we have Definitely not very shonky at all, Y connector. Is it going to work? Well, we'll have to find out, won't we? But I like the fact it's removable, so if this doesn't work, or if I find something better, I can unplug all this, plug the original USB power back into the original socket, and the bike's back to standard. So we'll have to see how this works. So for you it's been a jump cut, for me it's been half an hour of fiddling about and drinking tea. And this is what I've come up with. Got the original USB wired into its original plug. And this is my Satnav, my TomTom power cable, which I've just taken off from where it was running along the frame to the rear of the bike. I've put that back and now it's tucked up under here. That only took a few minutes, that was nice. The TomTom cable will come out underneath this bar, frame bar, and I've worked out as long as it comes to about there, that's about right, the amount of cable I'm going to need. I think it'll be fairly unobtrusive, it will be visible above the light. You could route it out the other side, but just be careful because the fork legs are moving down there, and at full lock there's not a lot of space, so I decided this way the wire is well out of the way of any moving parts of the bike. And so it might be slightly visible, but that's no big deal to me. There's plenty of room under the cover, under here, so none of this is being crushed in too fast, that's good. I just sort of arrange it carefully when I put it back together, just being aware of the screw holes to make sure that there's no cabling going too close to those. One thing I found, maybe one of you guys knows, a little connector there. If anyone knows what that's for, let me know. I wonder what other thing you can plug into the bike. What option does this bike not have? What am I missing? There we are. So I should just put this back together. Actually laying the cable on the inside first so it's nicely tucked out of the way. Laying a cable, yeah, that means something different in different languages, doesn't it? It's a little awkward, you've got to tuck the feet underneath. Oh yeah, that's pushing together fine. There's no stress there. There's nothing pushing against it, so that should be good to go back together. And as you see, that's what will be visible, just the cable coming up there. Right, one moment please while I put all this back together. Just going to show you the frame that holds the screen on actually before I put it all back together. You have to excuse the disgusting state of the screen, it is still covered in dead flies. So, as I said, I decided to take the frame off all in one piece to save having to take the screen off as well. That seems to work quite well. Just be careful, this frame is all plastic, so just be gentle with it when you're pulling it apart. Also in the bottom sections here, there's a slightly overcomplicated set of bolts and spacers, so just be careful not to lose those when you're taking it all apart. They can drop out quite easily. And as you saw with the travel standard frame, this plastic is bendy enough that I can get a Allen key in there quite easily, so there's no need to remove the screen at all. Downside is obviously it's all a bit heavier if you're trying to move it around, but I haven't found that to be a problem really whilst I've been doing this. Right, let's put it all back together. So let's see if she works, see if we've got power. Bike coming on. Hey, TomTom power. Awesome. Okay, so just have a look at the tools I used for this job. It might vary slightly depending on how you do it, but this is what I needed. A few zip ties. Can't do anything on a bike without zip ties. A couple of crimp butts connectors. I got these from Alfred's just because it's open. There are many cheaper places to get them from, but this is somewhere I could actually go and pick them up on the day. Some small wire cutters. They're not really wire cutters, they are for soft wire only, so they're great for cutting zip ties and small, thin, soft electrical wiring, but they're not particularly strong, but they are very good for sort of fine jobs. 5mm Allen key for the screen frame, 4mm Allen key for the screen frame, but because of course you couldn't possibly make them all the same size. Small Phillips screwdriver, small size. I always have some of these angle nose pliers, they're just really handy for getting in and grabbing things if you need to. Pardon me. I didn't need these, but depending on what you're doing, some wire cutters, some actual wire cutters of some kind might be useful. The good old time-saving amp super seal connectors. So I used 2 of the socket type and 1 of the plug type. Crimp tool for the butt connectors. This is a sort of semi-fancy one, but you can use the ones that come in the crimp sets if that's what you've got. And then finally, my magic wire strippers that I love so much. And finally, my magic wire strippers that I love so much.